Shin, the Supreme Kai of Universe 7, and, as most of his counterparts, a pretty standoffish guy when it comes to interfering with universal affairs. It's only when the universe is in a complete and utter danger that he decides to intervene, but even then, like most Kais, he's not that physically powerful. He has to find people to fight for him. Majin Buu was one of those threats, being sealed away not by Shin, but by the evil wizard Babidi, who could barely control him and moved around from planet to planet, only waking him in times where he wanted to destroy it. It was one of these such trips where Babidi landed on the planet Earth with the sealed away Majin Buu, and, in one of the few acts of direct intervention, Shin managed to catch him off guard before Buu was freed, ending the evil wizard's life. And then, not knowing what to do with it, Shin left the sealed ball right on Earth, completely unprotected, occasionally having an eye on it and waiting for someone to try and open it up. But what if Shin didn't simply wait? What if, in a different turn of events, Shin was a little more proactive with the protection of Earth and decided to train someone on his behalf? Well, that's the story that we aim to explore today, with What If the Supreme Kai Trained Goku. If you're new to this channel, please leave a like and subscribe, it helps out immensely, and leave your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. Our story begins not at the beginning of Dragon Ball, but a few hundred years before that. In fact, the time that Babidi first visited the planet Earth. The doppelganger of Babidi, this was a force that Shin thought that he wasn't going to have to worry about. However, it appeared as though his old foe had a contingency plan all along, and now that contingency plan was on Earth, trying to free Majin Buu. However, he couldn't do it. There was no one on the planet strong enough, and as he cursed himself for not being able to locate anyone strong enough to free Majin Buu, he left, vowing to return. Shin also cursed himself for not being able to end Babidi the same way that he did Babidi. It seemed as though this doppelganger was even smarter than the original, with Deborah acting as a bodyguard for him. For the years to follow, however, Shin maintained his standoffish behavior. He realized that so long as there wasn't anyone strong enough on the planet Earth, Buu shouldn't be able to be freed. However, this didn't last forever. He slowly became more anxious, worried in fact that Babidi would find a way to make it happen. What if the Earthlings grew strong enough for it to happen? What if Babidi simply brought someone from another planet to Earth to do it? There were just too many possibilities to ignore. He needed a plan. Shin ultimately landed on a decision, and one that went against his very nature. He would wait, observe Earth, and find someone with the potential to overcome the likes of Deborah, and by proxy, Babidi. He needed someone pure of heart so that they could not be swayed by Babidi. Someone up for adventure so that they'd be willing to leave Earth and head to the planet of the Kais for some training. And someone, most importantly of all, that wouldn't be completely shattered at the prospect of aliens existing. A lot of time passed and it didn't seem like anyone like that was going to pop up. There were, of course, some pretty substantially strong human fighters by human standards, but in an intergalactic scale, they weren't much of anything. This Roshi fellow especially caught his eye. His interesting fighting style and demeanor seemed to oppose each other, and yet it somehow worked. And he took on some pretty interesting pupils, this one referring to himself as Ox King, and another by the name of Gohan. And Gohan was someone really noteworthy. He seemed pretty pure of heart, and very humble, open to different ideas, but he just wasn't strong enough. Nevertheless, Shin continued to pay attention to Gohan and actually became sad as he saw him age. As his youth began to leave him, it just broke his heart a little bit that these humans, they were so frail with such short lifespans. They couldn't really accomplish a lot in terms of what the entire universe could, but on their own planet, he had accomplished so much just to end up living the life of a hermit out of nowhere. But then, one night, something happened. A ship from outer space came crashing onto the planet Earth, and, Gohan being Gohan, he went to explore it, figuring out exactly what it is rather than running away from it. Shin recognized it to be a Saiyan pod, and he feared the worst for Gohan. Clearly, this was a Saiyan invasion, but as the pod opened, a child came out. He had known that Saiyan children were often sent to planets, with the prospect of conquering them as they grew, but this still came as a bit of a shock to him. Nevertheless, Gohan was a decently strong person, able to handle a Saiyan child no problem. But then, Gohan did something that even surprised Shin. He took him in. It was practically kicking and screaming as well. This Saiyan child was having none of it. He wanted to cause chaos, not become a house body. But then one day, through a complete stroke of luck, the Saiyan child fell from a high place and clunked his head on a rock, and suddenly, his personality completely changed. The personality shift was night and day, and suddenly this Saiyan child was completely impressionable and became a mold of Grandpa Gohan himself, learning so much from the only person he had interactions with. All the while, Shin had been researching extensively into Saiyan history and physiology and came to realize that they had a lot more potential than under Frieza's boot, the Super Saiyan, and even, in brief mentions, the Super Saiyan God, were a thing of their history that they had long forgotten. Other than brief mentions of the Super Saiyans of legend from Vegeta muttering around being one of the final remnants of the entire Saiyan race, he hadn't really heard any of this from them. This was all research from ancient texts. His observations of the Saiyans seemed to be on point from what he had already believed of them, that they were brute savages just going around conquering planets for the fun of it. Frankly, no better than the likes of Babidi or Majin Buu. However, this Saiyan child who had been named Goku by Gohan seemed to be different. After he hit his head, he just became pure. And it was then that it dawned on Shin that this was it. The perfect example of the being that he was looking for. One pure of heart, even through complete accident. And, on top of that, one with immense potential that he would never achieve without outside interference. Shin started to deliberate on the time that he should make his appearance. He thought long and hard about the right way to approach Gohan and Goku, but his deliberation was cut short one night when a full moon appeared on the planet Earth, and Goku, being of Saiyan nature, looked at it and transformed into the mighty Ozaru, going on a rampage, and putting Gohan's life in jeopardy. Shin realized that his options were gone, whether it be the attachment that he had managed to achieve with Gohan, or the fact that Goku needed a good figure constantly in his life. He immediately Kai'd over to the planet Earth and leapt into action, knocking out Goku and surprising Gohan. "What? What's going on here, and who are you?" inquired Grandpa Gohan, shocked at all the events that had just taken place in front of him. "Do not be alarmed, Gohan. I do apologize for this circumstance that I am introducing myself to you. I am Shin, the Supreme Kai." "Well, I suppose I should say it's an honor, but I'm afraid I don't know what a Supreme Kai is." "But I suppose that it's good to meet you either way. It seemed as though I was going to be in a lot of trouble there." Shin was taken aback a bit by Gohan's chuckle. Sure, he had been initially startled, but he seemed as though he had warmed up to Shin very quickly, even quicker than he would have thought. "Yes, you were in fact in great jeopardy, but not by some foul beast. In fact, it's your own grandson, as you refer to him, Goku." Shin hovered over to the unconscious great ape and formed a keyblade, cutting off the tail, and as he did so, Goku reverted back to his young child form. Shin looked back to Gohan, expecting some sort of a reaction, but Gohan calmly walked over to Goku and picked up his grandchild. "You are not surprised at the advent of the fact that he is not of this world? Do you think me a fool? Clearly you have been watching me for quite a while. You should have realized that I knew that he was an alien all along. It didn't matter to me, but he fell from the sky. I'd have to be a fool not to see that. But he's my boy, first and foremost, before anything else. That's all that's ever mattered to me." "You are a humble man, Gohan. I know I have no right to ask of it, but may I enter your household and have a few words with you?" Grandpa Gohan agreed, and all of them entered into his small, cozy home. Shin gave him all of the information, everything about Majin Buu to Goku's origins, and everything in between. They conversed about what Goku's destiny would be, and ultimately how he would be raised. However, Shin and Gohan were already on the same page with that. After observing Gohan for years, he had realized the kind of person he was, and in fact, admitted that he was the best influence for Goku to have. Shin would periodically stop in to train and discipline Goku on the planet Earth, and when Goku grew older, he would come to the world of the Kais to train, and potentially learn with the Z-Sword if he were able to pull it out. For now, though, there wasn't much he could do. Goku was still pretty young, and not quite yet ready to be molded by this level of discipline. So, knowing this, Shin took his leave. At least, he almost did. As he went to take his leave, he noticed a peculiar item sitting on a counter. It was orange, round, and had stars inside of it. Shin sifted through his mind of all the memories of the research he had done, and he came to realize that was in fact a Dragon Ball, made by, more likely than not, a Namekian. And if it was made by a Namekian and still active, that means that there's one on this planet. He had been so fixated on the humans that he hadn't really paid attention to anything else. He felt around, and sure enough, he did sense the Namekian. Using the Kai Kai ability, he immediately appeared right in front of it, and noticed that it was a guardian of the planet. This elderly Namekian was startled, but he composed himself quickly, realizing who exactly he was looking at. Oh, apologies. You are Kai. You recognize me. Fascinating. Well, it's for the best. I have some information to impose on you as well. I need you to keep an eye on this planet closer than even I. More time passed, with Shin periodically showing up to teach Goku some of the basics. In fact, Gohan got in on the learning a little bit too, mastering the art of flight, something that humans didn't seem to have common knowledge of. Gohan mentioned to Shin that his master had never taught him such things, and Shin mentioned the fact that he knew of Master Roshi pretty well. He'd been watching him for a while too, and actually find him quite impressive in his own way, mainly with the fact that he was still alive to this day, long after the natural lifespan of a human being. Gohan was actually amazed at this news. He had no concept of how long a Kai could live, but if he had been around for hundreds of years and looked that young, it must have been a long time. In fact, were the stories that he was told of Majin Buu ones that he had experienced firsthand? Shin had been a little vague on that. Ah, yes, I suppose that I only told you about the threat of Majin Buu. I didn't really tell you my personal experiences with him. In fact, this Buu isn't the Buu that I originally knew. The one that I knew was mindless, chaotic. Without Babidi controlling him, who knows what could have happened. The Buu that I've come to see since then is one that is more comprised of what the previous Kais were. Kais that inevitably met their end at Majin Buu's hands. I only survived because Majin Buu chose not to kill me. It was odd, in fact. When my predecessor was absorbed, he just became more docile, more interested in things other than mere destruction, and thus I was spared. I am very sorry to hear that, but Goku can stop this destruction. It will end this cycle, and for once in your what must be absurdly long life, will finally have some peace. Shin didn't have any words to say. All he could hope in his heart was that Gohan was right, and that's where we're going to be leaving things for right now. If you like an origin story change, check out this one where Chi-Chi is a Saiyan, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!